Thank you. So yes, founded here in Barcelona back in 2013, Wallapop is really one of the pioneers and the leaders of this second-hand revolution that we're seeing, this whole socio-cultural movement of buying second-hand. And it's something that's kind of leading a new circular and sustainable vision of the world. So Rob, thinking about Wallapop, I mean, now there's a community of, 15 million users every month? What's the vision and the mission of the company?
So first, thanks for having me here. It's great to be here and great to see everyone. So thanks a lot. And yeah, I can't believe next year will be the 10-year anniversary of Wallapop. And like
Congratulations.
you mentioned, now we've got 15 million users, 120 million listings on Wallapop every year. So a lot of growth over the last 10 years, a lot to be proud of. I think one of the things for us that's exciting is the foundations and why we exist really haven't changed. Obviously, what we do to make that happen has changed, but the foundations haven't. So our purpose is still the same. We're empowering a more conscious and human way of consumption. Mm-hmm. And our pillars are still the same. So we see three pillars that kind of underpin that purpose. The first one being opportunity, so creating economic opportunity, whether that's, especially in times of inflation, finding great deals on things that you need, or whether that's turning things you don't need into needed cash. So that's the first pillar. The second one around sustainability, so extending the life of products, promoting reuse, promoting less new consumption, et cetera. And the third one around accessibility.
Okay.
So being a brand and a site for everyone. Like you mentioned, we have 15 million users, which is almost half of the Spanish internet population. So, and that's for us really important that anyone can use Wallapop. We're providing kind of access to e-commerce for everyone. So that hasn't changed, our purpose or our pillars. And our approach really hasn't changed that much either. I mean, again, we've adapted it. But first, it's about building an inspiring brand, building an inspiring product. And I think one of the things, our brand is maybe our strongest asset. And for those of you who have been here in Spain over the last 10 years, you've seen the Wallapop, our branding, and you've seen kind of, we've been able to make to create a market, if you will, make trading secondhand cool. And so building this inspirational brand and causing people to do something that maybe wasn't natural before, that's been part of our DNA from day one, and it remains that way now, about getting out there, telling the right messages, not being afraid to challenge the status quo, et cetera. Building this engaging brand, building a really inspiring product as well. At the beginning, it was, how do you find things near you?
Sure.
Now, one of the things we're working a lot on is, how do we make sure my Wallapop experience is different from yours? So when I use Wallapop to trade records.
So kind of tailoring and personalizing the experience.
Exactly. I've traded almost 100 records on Wallapop this year. So when I open Wallapop, it should feel like I'm entering my local record store. When you open Wallapop, it should feel like something else. And we've started making progress on that, especially this year. So any of you here who open Wallapop will start to see more tailored content that starts to feel just for you.
Super exciting.
Yeah, so it's been about creating this inspirational brand and experience, reducing friction. Again, at the beginning, this was largely around using the smartphone. So we were the first horizontal commerce platform to really embrace mobile first and mobile only, and using whether that's the camera to make listing an item take 30 seconds, or whether that's geolocation, like I mentioned. These were things that were new at the time. We've also been the first horizontal classified site to really embrace transactional. So integrating payments, integrating shipping, things that in the past basically said, okay, we don't want to get involved in this. We've said, how do we reduce friction in the overall experience rather than just focusing on when you're on the site? And then the final piece is around, which is the same, also around building this amazing selection of unique inventory. And so it started with, how do we get peer-to-peer? How do we get you and me and everyone here trading with each other? And we've been working on that since day one. In the last few years, we've added solutions for micro businesses, so who have been exceptionally hurt during the last few years with COVID and now with economic challenges. So now we're helping micro businesses with unique inventory bring their products to market. And then in the last year, we've also extended Wallapop
Sure.
to Italy and Portugal.
The more people you bring into the platform, the more markets you can access and the more niche areas you can go into and the more products you can provide and continue expanding.
Exactly, and that's
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Interesting. So one of the core pillars to Wallapop is, of course, sustainability. And this aspect of circularity is super important, and it's something that we are really seeing a lot in society right now, to the point that sustainability is perhaps becoming a little bit of a buzzword. So I'm wondering, to Wallapop, what does sustainability look like, and what does it mean?
Yeah, and that's where I think we're really fortunate. Obviously, like I mentioned before, sustainability is at the core of what we do, and what it means to us is making secondhand first choice. So reducing barriers, making so whenever any of us think of what do I want to, what do I need, that I'm not only thinking about Wallapop for specific items, but actually starting to think about it's so easy, I can get great value, it's so convenient, that actually I go to Wallapop first because it's the right thing to, not only is it the right thing to do, but I'm getting a great deal. And we think we have a pretty unique proposition in that case where it's great value you can feel good about.
And how exactly can you build that brand identity and build that community with your followers?
Yeah, so it's been, like I mentioned at the beginning, we've invested a lot in building our brand, and that's also been something I think that's differentiated us in the world of peer-to-peer classifieds, where, again, at the beginning it started with more TV, because that's how we needed to get the Wallapop word out to the masses. But like now we've actually started to look at by channel, how do we reach. So when you talk about sustainability, one of the biggest proponents of sustainability, and I would say helping drive the overall trends, has been Gen Z. And for us, you don't reach Gen Z with TV.
Sure.
So we are on TikTok, and we have an online magazine, and we're doing new types of marketing to make sure we're actually sharing the Wallapop message where our customers are, and that's changed. Our mix has changed quite a lot over the last few years.
And so you mentioned there Gen Z. Do you see this younger generation as being more conscious in their consumption practices, or is it just that these tech-based tools that enable more conscious decisions are more accessible to them?
Yeah, so I think overall they are driving the change. But interestingly, and so every year we do this study called La Red del Cambio, which is for us a way to understand customer sentiment towards sustainability here in Spain. And so we survey a bunch of Spaniards about what are their attitudes towards sustainability. And the interesting thing, and so I've been working in peer-to-peer marketplaces for almost 20 years, and how quickly this has changed. So a few years ago, and even less than 5 years ago, sustainability was a nice to have, something that people said, hey, this is important to me, but somewhere down in the list.
Yeah.
And now it's actually, 62% of people say they actually consider sustainability in every purchase decision. So it's changed, and this has happened over the last 2 or 3 years. So we've hit this inflection point, and I think Gen Z is helping drive that. But ultimately, you can look at any demographic, and the thinking is changing.
Yeah.
So it's not just Gen Z, although I think they're helping make this more visible and really and driving it.
So they may be driving it into the consciousness of everyday life, but it is across the whole spectrum of generations and communities. Interesting. And so, of course, we just had Black Friday. We're now coming up to Christmas. It's a time of consumption in many ways. Have you seen any changes this year compared to last year, for example, in how Wallapop has performed over the period?
So last week was the biggest week in the history of Wallapop.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks for that. And interestingly, when we ask customers, 52% of people say they're now looking actually to buy secondhand for Christmas presents or for holiday presents, which is, again, a huge change from 2 years ago that most people wouldn't have considered that. I know I'm buying all of the gifts in my family. Obviously on Wallapop, I work there. But, I see this happening, this is happening more and more. And interestingly, that same study, the La Red del Cambio, we saw that 60% of Spaniards say that they will buy more used than new goods in the next 3 years. Okay. And that's a huge, if you think about how much of a change that means to kind of consumption habits and retail consumption. Now, you don't even need to believe it will get to 60%, but this is a massive transformation in how we buy things.
It's a massive cultural shift in mindset. And so how have startups like Wallapop kind of fueled that transition, do you think?
Yeah, so again, for us, it's about looking across the experience, and it's at the core of our experience. So ultimately, the vast majority of things sold on Wallapop or traded on Wallapop are secondhand. And it's been around being clear about what we are and what we're for, and then being laser focused on reducing friction there. How do we make it, and what I mentioned before, how do we make secondhand first choice, and how do we make it so you don't have to make these big trade-offs and you say, hey, this is a great deal, I feel good about it, and it's easy. And I think that's for us.
And do you see any other factors that are contributing to this socio-cultural shift, maybe in terms of more consciousness about the climate crisis or economics and stability? Are these other factors into play?
I think so, yeah. For us, and we've seen this year, we've actually seen acceleration in our core metrics across the year. Interestingly, that correlates very well with inflation here in Spain. And so you can make a good argument that Wallapop is more needed than ever. When I mentioned that value and creating value that you can feel good about is now more, those two things, if you think about, so three of the trends we're built on are this need for value, the second one being this sustainability and how it's driving consumer behavior, the third one being e-commerce. And if you look at e-commerce adoption in Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, and Portugal, it's actually much less lower than the rest of most of the rest of Europe, and it's been growing much faster. So there's a huge gap to close there. And so when you look at those three things in combination, getting good value, I can feel good about in an easy way. That's where we're seeing that's really driving this.
Interesting. And so, of course, we see this massive success of Wallapop in Spain, and as you've expanded to Portugal and Italy, across Southern Europe, as you mentioned. What other long-term plans does Wallapop have to kind of continue to push forward this movement of secondhand?
Yeah, so it goes back to where we started around continuing to make our brand more inspirational, continuing to help people think next time they need to buy something, I'm going to start at Wallapop, and making sure we're reaching customers in the right place. It's continuing down that line of personalization. I'm super excited. I couldn't be more excited about personalization. It's one of my favorite projects.
It's like one of the best tech trends, I think, of the day.
Yeah, so super excited about that, and we're just getting started there and continuing to make our product more tailored to every user, continuing to reduce those frictions. So this year we've launched Wallapop Wallet, and now you can, and so one thing I mentioned is we've reduced friction based on payments and shipping products. But this year, now you can actually trade locally, which has been I would say, the traditional use case for Wallapop. Now you can basically use Wallapop to pay through the app no matter what you do, whether it's across Spain, whether it's Spain to Italy, whether it's Spain to Portugal, or whether you and I are trading in person, because you can use your Wallapop wallet, and it's reducing kind of the need for you as a seller to have change. It's reducing the need for me as a buyer to bring a lot of cash, so it's creating more sense of security and just making it easier.
Simpler.
So, exactly.
Great. And so just as a final question to wrap up, because I think we're running out of time, if there was anybody who was still hesitant to join this second-hand revolution, what would you say to them?
So I think it's good for us, it's good for our community, and it's good for the planet. So I don't see a reason not to.
It's a win-win-win.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.